Hello, and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. My name is Jess, and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you. Let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also, keep in mind that if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentations. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up on our tour, there are going to be lots of cool aha moments in the MegaCast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will automatically get added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes we will be giving away throughout the MegaCast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. You do need to be in attendance here live at the webinar in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the MegaCast today. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, hey, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click into the Handouts section, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember here today is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's MegaCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all the questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about winning, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the MegaCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content right away after we wrap, you want to jump right in, make sure that you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and to grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in that Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected after we wrap today. Now, both you and your coworker, your friend, could win a prize, and we actually hold those drawings every month. So be sure you refer somebody awesome before you head out today. It could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab and fill out the application. Then the Actual Tech crew will match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys or test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you will learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, how to prevent and recover. The site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. So go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free, super easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in. So let's get rolling.
Oh, hello, everyone. I hope you're ready for this because today we are talking about disaster avoidance, how ransomware readiness protects from all angles. Ransomware attacks seem sensational, they're impactful, and they make for some tantalizing news headlines. Most of us would be terrified to wake up with the name of our organization as the victim of a ransomware attack in the news. Unfortunately, it's becoming a when, not if situation when we discuss getting attacked. However, we can now be prepared and well equipped to avoid these costly and time consuming attacks, and we can have a plan in place to quickly and seamlessly recover. With the right ransomware readiness plan in place, your story could be about how you defended yourself from an attack and recovered in minutes or seconds. If that sounds good to you, then you will love today's MegaCast. And luckily, the awesome folks at TierPoint, Zerto, a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise company, Delinea, Nasuni, and Rubrik have sent some of their top experts to help us navigate this conversation and share the best tools and strategies to avoid disasters through a ransomware readiness plan and make your implementation of this plan seamless. This is going to be a great day, and I can't wait to get started, so let's dive right in. Let me start by saying hi, and again, my name is Mackenzie Puddesy. I am a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, and my fellow moderators, Jess Steinbach, Scott Becker, and Keith Ward will be here with us throughout today on live chat and popping in for some Q&A and keynote goodness as well. Okay, let's talk prizes. I know you were all waiting for that. Today on the MegaCast, you could win one of 3 Apple MacBook Airs with the M3 chip, so looking good. And not only that, we are giving away a $300 Amazon gift card every 30 minutes. As mentioned in the housekeeping chat this morning, you can find the full T's and C's linked in the handouts tab. And if you have any questions about that, go check it out. And hey, with that, I think we are indeed ready to rock. Today's event is about being prepared for ransomware to avoid disasters. For our keynote, we are going to set the table for the discussion with a deep dive into a specific ransomware event in the news that will help remind us all what we're protecting against. For this keynote, my fellow moderator, Scott Becker, is going to talk to ransomware expert and author Alan Liska. I'm super excited for this one. So, Scott, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Alan, thanks for joining me.
Oh, I'm excited to be here, and you're talking about my favorite thing, so this is going to be great.
I was just going to say, we're here to talk about one of the most interesting things in the world, which is a criminal indictment with lots of detail. So, and this one happens to be about ransomware, specifically the huge Lockbit ransomware organization. So, let me give a quick overview for our audience. It's a 26-count indictment by a federal grand jury in New Jersey. It was handed up at the beginning of May and unsealed recently. This indictment is against Dmitry Yurovich Koroshev of the Russian Federation and alleges that Koroshev is the leader, developer, and administrator of the Lockbit ransomware group that ran rampant for 4 years from early 2020 until a law enforcement takedown this February. And Alan, the indictment calls Lockbit, and I quote, a massive criminal organization that has at times ranked as the most prolific and destructive ransomware group in the world. So you've followed ransomware and ransomware groups for some time. Does that sound accurate to you?
Yes and no. So absolutely, massive damage, all kinds of chaos, and all kinds of people involved in it. But unlike a lot of ransomware as a service groups, which Lockbit is an example of, the core of the group was relatively small. Dmitry liked to do most of the stuff himself, run most of the stuff himself, and contract out everything. So it wasn't like Dimitri and his buddies the way you see with something like Conti, where it's much more organized. He was kind of the mastermind, and then and then he would basically contract out development work. He would contract out design work, etc. Anything that he needed, he just would pay somebody to do it, and then sometimes fail to pay them, which is why there was always this drama associated with it. Normally when you and I have these conversations, they're much more technical. I feel like when we talk about the lockbit and the indictment, it's like Real Housewives of ransomware that we're dealing with here. It's on a different level.
Any examples of some of these feuds, or anything?
Well, so for example, the reason that Lockbit, despite the takedown, Lockbit attacks continue to be so prolific is that when he had the third version of Lockbit created, he just refused to pay the developer. And so the developer released the code for anybody who wants it. So we still see all of these Lockbit attacks from people that are using the stolen code. And that's just one example. He's been banned from just about every underground forum. And so this is where all the criminals hang out. And he's so distrusted by even the criminals that they insisted on banning him there. So again, it's just all of this kind of drama that surrounds him and surrounds Lockbit in general.
Well, so with all this drama, what made Lockbit so effective? Did it innovate in some important way, or did it just do things effectively from the ransomware criminal standpoint?
So one thing is, Dimitri was really good at marketing, and that's part of running a ransomware as a service, and part of it that a lot of people didn't understand. And for example, you've read the indictment. Did you see the wanted poster?
No, I didn't see the wanted poster.
Okay, so there's a wanted poster, and they've got a couple of pictures with him. I'll send it to you after this. And his marketing skills are going to continue because he came up with the perfect Halloween costume for everybody in InfoSec this year. Because in one of the pictures, in the wanted poster, he's wearing AirPods, but one of his AirPods is in like this. And so now everybody's going to copy that, like it's in sideways. And now everybody's going to copy that and make that their Halloween costume. He was really good at marketing. But he also did make really good ransomware. He made it a lot easier to carry out the ransomware attacks. And then he would do things like he would run tests of, his ransomware against other ransomware, the way that we see like AV Labs and other things do with different antivirus. He would run and publish tests about how much faster his ransomware is. So that sort of cult of personality followed him. At one point, he offered people $150 if they got Lockbit tattoos. So all of these things that he was doing to build this audience and build this, and it worked. He had, according to the NCA, he had 187 affiliates at the time that they did the takedown. That's more than any other ransomware group we've seen. And for people who don't know, the affiliates are the ones who carry out the attacks, right? The Dimitri himself wasn't carrying out any attacks. What he was doing is renting his infrastructure, ransomware as a service, and the affiliates were the ones who would carry out the attacks, and then they would split the ransom payment. That's why I kind of jokingly call it, multi-level marketing for bad guys.
Yeah. So my impression of the ransomware battle is that it's like whack-a-mole, and you alluded to this already, but authorities take down one network and another one pops up. You talked about the dispute that resulted in contractor releasing the source code. I mean, what have you seen in terms of overall ransomware activity since the Lockbit takedown, and where do you expect that to go?
I think the Lockbit takedown's a little bit different because with the there were really the two takedowns, right? Because we had the first one in February, and then we had the second one in May where the indictment was dropped. Yeah. So what and this was the first takedown was largely led by the NCA, the National Criminal Agency in the UK, with the United States and Germany and France and everybody else in the world being involved in it as well. But one of the things that they really focused on was this is not a one-time thing, and that's been the problem with some of these takedowns in the past. Is you take it down, and then what they do is they come up with a new ransomware, or for some reason they decide to retire. Like the bad guys, they either come up with a new ransomware, or if they decide to retire, then there's one down, but there's another to take their place. Because this was drawn out, and this was drawn out intentionally, and I think of it almost like a psyop, where the governments, multiple governments, have said, "We're coming for you. More's coming. You should sit and worry about that." And so we've actually seen a drop in the number of ransomware attacks, publicly reported ransomware attacks, in March and April after the takedown. So compared to 2023, the numbers are actually down this year. Now, 2023 was a particularly horrible year, so it would have been hard to sustain that level anyway. But we started off with January and February pretty much matching 2023 numbers, and now we are seeing a decline. And that's because not only did you take Lockbit down, but you probably freaked out a lot of his affiliates, because of that continuing drip of information. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And I thought it was a master stroke by the NCA to create a replica of the Lockbit site, where they said, here's what we're going to do in 3 days. Here's what we're going to do in 7 days. And then posting that information there to let them know that you and I know that law enforcement continues to work behind the scene. And but making it known publicly like that, I think, does have a deterring effect. And in fact, we saw this, I know it's not the topic of today, but last week we had the Operation Endgame, which is where they took down a bunch of the botnet servers. Some of the intel that led to these botnet servers, and the botnets are really important because ransomware attacks are a multi-stage attack, and sorry if I'm going on too long, but are a multi-stage attack where you have the initial access and then you have the ransomware attack. If you can take away the initial access, then you never get to that second stage. So all of these botnets that are used for initial access, a bunch of them were taken down in Operation Endgame, and some of the intel that that led to the takedowns in Operation Endgame came from the Conti takedown all the way back in 2022. So law enforcement takes a while to get their way through it, but when they're using that intel to build on these, that makes it more effective. And what it does is, yes, there's still whack-a-mole, but you have a smaller whack-a-mole board that you're playing with. So there are fewer and fewer actors that are working in this space.
Fascinating. Well, Alan, it's always great to get your take. You always have context that's just invaluable. Really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much, as always, and you have a good day.
You too.
All right. Thank you so much, Alan. Thank you so much, Scott. I loved kind of just being able to relive a moment in history with you guys. And you definitely generated a lot of buzz in the questions tab, a lot of questions about this. We don't have the two hanging on for a Q&A directly after this keynote, but hopefully a lot of these questions will get answered through the different presentations today from our teams coming on. Now, you might have noticed there is a poll up. This poll is just asking you, what is your time frame for adding new or updating your existing IT solutions at your company? Of course, you might be here figuring that out. You're not sure. You're doing some research, trying to sort out what are the tools, what are the strategies you need so that you can implement them in the coming months or years. Some of you might be looking to make some quick moves, and others maybe kind of a 6 month to 2 year timeline. And that all sounds great. Now, I do want to remind all of you that there is a $50 best question gift card for each session today. So I encourage you to send in mindful questions during each session for a chance to win, but more importantly, to take advantage of having these experts here live and available to answer your burning questions. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our first team here. We are starting things off on a high note. And it's not one, but two teams co-presenting. So we've got here from TierPoint, Aaron Hegler. He's the lead solutions engineer at TierPoint. And from Zerto, a Hewlett-Packard enterprise company, Mike Nassis. He's the product marketing manager over at Zerto. And essentially, these two teams are going to chat a little bit about how you can take a tandem approach with TierPoint and Zerto in order to create your ransomware readiness plan. And with that, Mike, Aaron, I'm going to kick things over to you, and then I'll be joining you for the Q&A. So the floor is yours.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today. My name is Mike Nassis. I'm a product marketing manager with Zerto. And with me, I also have Aaron Hegler. He's a lead solutions engineer with TierPoint. And together, we're going to talk you through your ransomware readiness strategy and how it can be improved with Zerto and TierPoint. Well, before we get into the nitty gritty of our solutions, let's level set a little bit here and just kind of look at what happens when ransomware hits and really the cost of it. So these are just a few statistics here on average. We're actually seeing the average cost of ransomware recovery to be close to $2 million. So when you factor all those, as an aggregate, all the factors in, you're looking at a pretty hefty sum. And on top of that, you're also looking at an average disruption period of an entire month after an attack. And unfortunately, with an attack, also with being down, of course, comes revenue loss and potentially even a period of time where your business might have to close. So these statistics, of course, they're not to scare anybody or anything like that. It's just something that is an unfortunate reality in today's world with ransomware. And I'm sure you've heard this before, but it's not a matter of if anymore. It's really a matter of when. So it's all about being prepared and being ready for an attack. And we'll talk about how our solutions can help with that. Now, one of the other unfortunate parts of a ransomware attack is really the unpredictable nature of it, right? So with a potential, let's say a natural disaster, right, you probably are getting some heads up on when something might hit, right? With a ransomware attack, of course, you're most likely going to be blindsided. You don't know when it's coming. You don't know who's attacking, right? And as we mentioned in the previous slide, many organizations, really regardless of industry, can be down for weeks or even months. So of course the question then becomes, how do we minimize this? Is it possible to greatly reduce this, or is this unfortunately just something I have to live with, right? And this unpredictable nature of it, the unknown blast radius. So even after you get hit and you realize you've been hit with a ransomware attack, how do you know what's been compromised and what hasn't been? So there's lots of questions here, and thankfully we can actually assist with those. So with Zerto's industry-leading continuous data protection and near synchronous replication, you really have a huge defense against ransomware. So with near synchronous replication, you're really getting the best of both worlds, right? The best of both synchronous and asynchronous approaches. It's less costly than synchronous, and on top of that, there's going to be no performance impact like asynchronous with snapshots. And because we sit at the hypervisor level, we can be a fully software-only solution that is totally independent of the underlying hardware and infrastructure, including storage. So that's really part of the reason why Zerto works so well across hypervisors, clouds, and different platforms. You really have the choice to do what's best for your organization, while Zerto really effortlessly works in the background without any production impact. And remember that continuous work in the background is completely hands-off for you. So there's no fiddling with backup windows or tweaking schedules or managing snapshot chains or anything like that. You're able to simply set it up, replicate, and it really stays always on to keep you always protected. Part of what makes Zerto's continuous data protection so powerful is really the unique journaling capabilities we have. So just being able to capture or a write or an IO doesn't necessarily mean you have true CDP, right? It has to be paired with this dynamic, hyper efficient journal. So our journal actually tracks every single change made in your application or on your server, and it logs these as checkpoints every 5 to 10 seconds, even if you have hundreds or thousands of servers. So this granularity is really important when it comes to recovery, specifically ransomware recovery. So whenever needed, you can actually rewind to an old checkpoint and easily recover from that exact point in time. What's more, we've also added in a detection component that detects potential anomalies or encryption in real time that can alert you when an attack is potentially happening, so you can really mitigate it and kind of squash it right in its infancy. So let's, for example, say a ransomware attack hits you at 10 a.m., right? And you, for whatever reason, weren't able to detect this. Even if that's the case, you can actually roll back to a checkpoint 5 or 10 seconds prior to that and essentially completely mitigate that infection. So that's really the power of the Zerto journal. And one of the really advantages that we have versus other vendors is really when it comes to recovery and specifically recovering complex enterprise apps. So Zerto really protects your workloads as cohesive logical entities. So that way you really avoid the inconsistent recovery of multi-VM applications where each VM is being spun up and restored to a different point in time. So with Zerto creating recovery points, when you're creating these recovery points, all of the VMs will share the same validated checkpoint with write order fidelity across all of them, regardless of which underlying hosts or data stores are being used. So when the application is recovered, every VM that makes up that application spins up from that same cross VM recovery point. And all of these come up as a whole in the boot order of your choice without any extra work on your part. So this, of course, ultimately allows you to protect and recover complex multi-VM applications together as one unit to that exact same point in time, which saves you a ton of resources when you're trying to reduce the amount of time dedicated to recovery. And of course, you already probably have enough on your mind after you got hit with a ransomware attack. The last thing you want to do, or the last thing you want to worry about is these different recovery points. So Zerto has you covered with this as well. Now, one of the ways that I think is also often overlooked when it comes to being prepared and ready for a ransomware attack is actually the ability to test and really test whenever you'd like. So one of the ways that our orchestration and automation really comes alive is with our failover testing. So our customers can dramatically reduce the time it takes to do the testing as well as the complexity involved. And it really allows them to test often and test comprehensively. So one example here, this is a real customer example who used to have extensive runbooks and lengthy DR exercises. With Zerto, they were able to reduce that by 98% and take a complicated 3.5-day process down to only a couple of hours. This is just one example of many of customers who every day just realize a tremendous amount of value from our non-disruptive testing and the fast RTOs that these tests demonstrate and are very achievable for their business. And one of the best ways, of course, to get our point across here with Zerto, you know, we went through all these slides about, you know, what we can do, our journal, all of our technology, right? What about Zerto in action after a ransomware attack? So this is a company called Tenkata. They produce, they manufacture fabrics and textiles and things like that for firefighters, military personnel, things like that. before they had Zerto, they were hit with a ransomware attack, and they lost 12 hours of data, and the recovery time was 2 weeks. Of course, they're a very important company. A lot of people rely on their fabrics, so they really can't afford that downtime. They ended up implementing Zerto, got hit with a second ransomware attack, but this time their data loss went from 12 hours to simply 10 seconds, and the recovery time went from 2 full weeks to just 10 minutes. So I think these numbers speak for themselves. This is a pretty amazing recovery story. And I had unfortunately limited time today, so I wasn't able to get to everything. I would have liked to. Zerto really has lots of different use cases, but just to really sum up what we can do, we are able to resume operations at scale in minutes and really recover to a state seconds before a ransomware attack or really any disruption. We're also able to de-risk your recovery with instant non-disruptive testing, and simplify everything from protection and recovery and mobility of your apps, and do this all in a simple, easy, software-only manner, to protect really any type of environment. And before I hand it off to Aaron, I would just like to say that if you are interested and wanted to learn a little bit more about Zerto, we have tons of resources at your disposal. So please check these out, scan the QR codes, and learn more about how Zerto can help you be more ransomware ready for your business. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Aaron. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Michael, for those exciting updates on the new security features of Zerto 10, especially the real-time encryption detection. I am Aaron Hegler, a lead solution engineer at TierPoint focused on security. Thank you for joining us today. I want to take a few moments to briefly introduce you to TierPoint before we continue on our topic discussing ransomware readiness. TierPoint is a leading hybrid IT service provider with 40+ facilities across the United States, interconnected via a layer 2 multi-point mesh network with speeds up to 100 gigs per second. TierPoint also offers low latency connectivity to hyperscale cloud providers from multiple points of presence. With our geographic redundancy, your workloads can be placed into facilities located on diverse power grids and weather patterns based on your risk profile. I've included a slide here to show the range of solutions that TierPoint offers businesses. Our portfolio includes cloud and co-location services. But today, let's focus on something crucial: ransomware readiness. If you're looking to boost your ransomware cyber resilience, our advisory and consulting teams are here to help. We can work with you to identify the best strategies and solutions to fortify your defenses. Our teams support a culture of continuous improvement and can assist you in creating robust cybersecurity frameworks and effective recovery measures. For instance, we recently helped a financial services firm enhance their cyber resilience by implementing advanced threat detection and response systems. What sets us apart is our consultative approach. We craft tailor-made solutions that perfectly align with your unique needs. We're ready to help you understand what it takes to succeed in building a strong and resilient cybersecurity posture. Data breaches are expensive. In the United States, the average cost of a data breach is $9.5 million. The cost includes paying the ransom, recovery activities, forensic activities, loss of revenue, and the possible reputation damage with your consumers and marketplace. Over 50% of organizations that have experienced a breach, if they're still in business, say these attacks and recovery activities result in increased costs in goods and services they must pass along to consumers. The intent of most data breaches are data destruction and holding your data for ransom. Ransomware typically accounts for over half of the malicious attacks. The objectives of most ransomware attacks are financial gain through ransomware and extortion. And this should come as no surprise: 82% of data breaches involve human error. One of the most probably well-known attacks in recent memory relates to in 2021 with the Colonial Pipeline breach, which was caused by a single compromised VPN credential. The company paid a ransom of roughly $4.4 million in Bitcoin, with the Justice Department being able to recover approximately half of that. This was the largest publicly disclosed cyber attack against critical infrastructure in the United States to date. The majority of the data compromised is customer personal identifiable information, employee PII, and intellectual property. The overall mean time to identify and contain a data breach was 277 days, or just over 9 months, and we've seen that figure remain relatively constant over the last few years. This is one of my favorite memes that really shows the struggle that many security teams face with managing their disparate security tools while trying to maintain security from the end user perspective. End user security training, should be an ongoing process, not an annual event that most of us go through, and they basically just tell you not to put your passwords on a sticky note, but empower your users to question things that seem to be out of place. And when talking about ransomware, the situation comes down to more than likely not if it happens, but when it happens. Attacks are costly. They create exposure and damage reputations. Attackers just don't lock up your data. They search your network for other opportunities to expose you. Hackers can delete whatever they want, even copies you might consider safe if your admin credentials have been compromised. Also, backups can be compromised and deleted as well, so that would delay your recovery and increase your recovery cost. One thing to consider is balancing your financial and human capital between defensive tools and resilience. This may differ based on your organization's tolerance for risk mitigation and/or acceptance. We feel the solution to ransomware readiness is focusing more on cyber resiliency to reduce the risk of the business disruption and damage from breaches. This resiliency must be engineered and practiced as an ultimate goal. Model key traits of different frameworks that are available. One of those being NIST IR 8374, ransomware risk management. And also maintain a balanced approach between defense and resilience that I mentioned on the previous slide, and align your modern data protection and recovery capabilities to take advantage of as-a-service benefits. While preventing ransomware attacks altogether is a great goal for protecting data, it's not always feasible. The demands on the business for agile service, innovative solutions, and always-on availability mean that relying on protection alone isn't enough. There is an imminent need for fast and reliable recovery that incorporates detection, protection, and recovery. There are two key components when recovering from a cybersecurity incident, those being business continuity and disaster recovery, and those two things are not exactly the same. DR is really a subset of the overall business continuity plan. And really two things you want to identify and plan for would be the RPO, how much data you can afford to lose, and the recovery time objective, how long you can afford to be down. And you should work with your business counterparts to determine which applications require that type of recovery and tier those accordingly. TierPoint partners with Zerto for delivery of our DRaaS services. Currently today we're protecting over 13,000 VMs with Zerto into our multi-tenant cloud as well as private cloud and public cloud targets. We have been Zerto's MSP of the year the last 4 years running. We're also a platinum tier partner in the top 5. This shows our proven track record and our experience in protecting workloads with Zerto. TierPoint DRaaS customers come in all shapes and sizes as well as varying levels of complexity. Over the years, we have helped a very large organization protect over 500 VMs from their diverse locations, targeting TierPoint provided hosted private cloud clusters. The clusters are chosen based on the characteristics defined by the customer. More recently, we have assisted a national packaging company by replicating their VM workloads temporarily into one of our multi-tenant clouds while they modernize their production infrastructure. This helped to mitigate risk and give them a peace of mind that their workloads are protected during their project. Both of these examples outline the level of customization that TierPoint can provide with a Zerto solution. It also shows our maturity in our DRaaS practice as well as flexibility in choosing a recovery environment. TierPoint services powered by Zerto include enterprise-class recovery on enterprise-class hardware, warm site solution with low RPO, RTO, SLA-backed recovery, as well as recovery into our private, multi-tenant, or public cloud targets. Our Zerto solution also offers real-time encryption detection that enables you to quickly recover from ransomware within minutes. Zerto also offers a cyber resilience vault that offers air-gapped, isolated recovery environment with immutable data copies. Also, the service can be a fully managed service or self-service, and TierPoint's consultants will work with you to identify the best approach for your environment. And with that, I'll bring it to a close. Thank you for all your time today and for listening to what Michael and I had to share about preparing your organization for when ransomware hits. Please feel free to reach out to us. Our contact information is available here, and for more details on our security and recovery services, we have also attached a fact sheet posted in the webinar portal. Thank you again and have a great day.
All right. Excellent. Thank you for that. That was a great presentation, and we are going to be joined by Andrew Silva from Zerto for the Q&A as well. So we've got 3 brains to pick in the house. We've got a boatload of questions here, so we're going to try to get through as many as we possibly can in the next 5 or so minutes. And just before I open up the Q&A, I just want to point out there is a poll up. The poll here is, what additional information would you like about the TierPoint Zerto solution? And essentially, this is your wish list. You know, if you're looking for data sheets, pricing details, a personal demo, plunk in your answer there. And after today's MegaCast, the teams at TierPoint and Zerto will reach out and make sure you get exactly what you are looking for. And with that, gentlemen, we've got Mike, we've got Aaron, we have got Andrew Silva, the technical marketing manager at Zerto. Are you 3 ready to dive into some Q&A here?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Yep. Sure.
All right. So I'm going to fire out some questions, and then you guys can maybe decide who should be the lead on it, or we can get a bit of feedback from all of you. So
sounds great.
Awesome. First one is from Don. Don is asking, how is there no performance impact with real-time replication of data? This is all done at the storage level, and if so, how doesn't that impact the network?
Yeah, so this isn't done at the storage level, right? So we're actually looking at things prior to committing to storage. So that gives us some advantages from a networking perspective. We also have some built-in network optimization capabilities, and then we require actually only 5 megs of bandwidth to be able to support our near synchronous replication. So we've built in a lot of these efficiencies into our software to really address this. So it really impacts the network very minimally.
All right, excellent. Okay, next question here. That's from Chad. Chad is asking, how does Zerto's platform utilize continuous data protection and automated failover to achieve disaster avoidance rather than just disaster recovery?
So some of the advantage of Zerto is, I mean, if you think there is going to be a disaster, right, imminent natural disaster or something that you can kind of plan, we can actually do automated failovers. You can actually initiate some of those automated failovers based off of, maybe an imminent disaster you see happening, or some things where you want to be a little bit more proactive in failing over. We can definitely set some of those capabilities up with Zerto. So it's once you kind of define the actions that you need to have happen to deliver those automated failovers, we can easily integrate that and use Zerto to facilitate kind of disaster avoidance. So I hope that answers your question. Happy to follow up later with more detail if you have any more questions.
Perfect. Okay, this one should be easy. This one is, do you need any hardware to run Zerto?
Yeah, so we are completely software only, so no hardware is required. We're doing this at the hypervisor layer. So it's a very lightweight deployment. It's a lightweight VM that's going to sit in your virtualization stack.
Okay, excellent. And speaking of virtualization, I have another question here saying, when VMs get restored, are they all different points in time?
So they're not, right? So we have this concept of virtual protection groups, which we all know that modern applications are made up of multiple different services and applications to deliver kind of a core service, like you have front end web servers, you have back end databases, you have all these different services. So with virtual protection groups, we can put all of those dependent services in a logical grouping called virtual protection groups, and then we're able to maintain consistency across all of those components that are being protected, right? So all of those components or all those VMs in those groups are going to have, the same checkpoint times and consistency within those checkpoints. So when you recover that application or multiple groups or multiple VMs in this group, they all do come to that same point in time when you recover them.
Okay, perfect. We've maybe got one or two more questions we can throw in here. So this one is coming in from Scott Milligan. He's asking, what are you checking for? Virus, ransomware, out of the ordinary copy, deletions, and encryptions? And how do you keep these updated? Things like 0-day issues, question mark.
Yeah, so we have several proprietary algorithms that we've used that we really look at entropy of encryption across your data, right? So we're actually able to look at encryption rates using several algorithms and other proprietary things that, give us that information to alert you on potential malicious activities taking place. And we are doing this in real time, utilizing our continuous data protection. And this is happening at the individual block level. Is you're protecting this data the same way with CDP. So we have an additional filtering mechanism that allows us to do this with some proprietary algorithms that give you this information.
Incredible. I'm always impressed by Zerto. You guys have been on a few other times, and I was like, oh, this is remarkably easy. So I think you guys are doing great things. That is all the time for Q&A, but any final kind of call to action if people want to get started with you guys, or if you two, well, as in to your point in Zerto, have any final remarks you want to leave the audience with here today?
If you want to learn more, from a Zerto perspective, get your hands on our labs. We have this encryption detection you can look at. We have some of these other capabilities. It's free of charge. You can spin up on-demand labs anytime you want. That's all I have on the Zerto side.
And from a TierPoint perspective, we're happy to engage you anytime to come do workshops, disaster recovery planning, business impact analysis, and BCP type workshops. So we're glad to work with you on those issues.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you all for being here today. I'm going to let you go, but until next time, take care. And again, thanks for sharing all this valuable information with us.
Happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Take care. Now, if you are looking to get started right away, if you haven't already, go check out that handouts tab. There is a handout from each of our teams here presenting today. And in the case of TierPoint and Zerto, you can download the fact sheet. It is cloud to cloud recovery, achieve IT resilience with disaster recovery automations for diverse environments. PDF there, so you may not find it online or elsewhere. So you definitely want to stash that now so you have it for the future, and you can go over it when you've got a little time after today's MegaCast. And with that, it is time for our first prize giveaway. This one here is going to be our first $300 Amazon gift card. Quick reminder that you must be present at the webinar to win. So hopefully your ears are perked up and you will hear this as your name is called. Our very first lucky winner is Melissa Tompkins from Texas. Huge congrats to you, Melissa. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And do not forget, there are still 3 more chances to win an Amazon gift card. There are 3 MacBook Airs up for grabs today, and the $50 best question gift card from each session, which will be drawn. Again, thank you for all of the questions that came in for this first session. We didn't have time to cover them all, but do not fret. These will be seen, these will be read, these will be handed over to the TierPoint and Zerto teams to reach out and make sure you get all that juicy and valuable information that you are looking for. And with that, I'm going to keep things moving along because we've got a stacked house today. Next up in the queue is Delinea. And from Delinea, we have Joseph Carson. He's the Chief Security Scientist and Advisory CISO over at Delinea. And if you've been on some of our other MegaCasts and EcoCasts, you might be familiar with Jess Steinbach, my fellow moderator. She is fantastic, and she is going to be joining Joseph for a lively conversational style presentation. What a treat. This is sure to be a compelling discussion. So, Joseph, I'll let you take it away. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, hey, all. So happy to be joining you guys at the MegaCast, and very happy to be joining you with Joseph from Delinea. Joseph, so excited to chat with you today.
Many thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about today's topic.
Yeah, we have some really great stuff in store. And I know we've got a lot to get to about where ransomware is now and all of the kind of, I'm going to say, fun facts and interesting tidbits that we've got ahead of us. But I know you and I were kind of chatting about the best way to go forward is with that quick look back. So could we start with a little bit of where we've been in ransomware? Maybe that's a good place to kick off.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, ransomware, it's not something new. It's been
Right.
around for quite a long time. And here's the evolution, that goes back. And it started really around the late, actually, 80s and early 90s. That's when ransomware started. And it really started with one of the first ransomware, which was the AIDS Trojan. And this was where you actually had to send money via the post to a PO box in Panama. And it was distributed through floppy disks. But it had quietened around for around the 2000s. We didn't hear much of ransomware at that time. But then really cryptocurrency around the late 2008, 2009 really started to take off. And it gave ransomware criminals a new avenue, a new way of getting paid for their criminal activities. And that started with CryptoLocker back in 2013. And it's just really evolved since then. And we've seen some really pretty nasty versions, things like Petya, not Petya, WannaCry, taking many organizations to a standstill. And then more recently with things like Maze, Black Hat, Revel, and Lockbit. It's got to the point where it's become that stable kind of criminal avenue, and we've started even getting to the point where many ransomware criminal gangs have become unicorns. They're $1 billion in basically criminal activity. So this is something that's been around for a long time, and we're starting to see it evolve even further. It's continuing to evolve and become devastating for organizations.
Yeah, and that's that evolution. I think, one of the things that we were chatting about a little bit earlier as well is that I think ransomware has become something that when we're sort of thinking of it as like a catch-all, just ransomware and, scary. But there's actually a little bit more nuance to that as well. There are different types of attack and various things that maybe at some points are a little bit more of a concern. And wondering maybe if we could explore a little bit about the different styles of ransomware attack and if there's one that you think the audience should be maybe more aware of or not.
Absolutely. So one of the things is that we've considered ransomware being that really bring the business to a standstill. The crypto side. Your data's
Yeah.
unavailable, your systems are unavailable.
Yeah.
But it started to evolve around about 4 or 5 years ago. We started seeing more of the ransomware as a service type of activities, and that really
Right.
spawned off a lot of new ways and new techniques. So getting into some of those types, the one that most are familiar with is the crypto style of ransomware is that you log into your systems and they become locked. You can't access your data is unavailable, and you have to go pay a ransom in order to get that decryption key in order to unlock your files. One area that's been on the increase and rise is that those types of crypto are very noisy. Typically, the organizations you hear about the media, you hear about the news. So the ransomware criminals have looked at alternative ways to try and make it a bit more stealthier, hidden behind the scenes, and they've used things like data exfiltration. So it becomes more data extortion techniques. They're less noisy. You don't hear about them in the news, and organizations become more willing to pay those types of ransomware, basically demands. We also see that distributed denial service; those tends to be a bit more noisier, but tend to be less. They tend to be coordinated with other types of activities as well. And then the screen lockers, completely locking up systems. So these are the kind of areas that we see most types of ransomware, but data exfiltration is the one that's on the rise, and that's the one that's now favored by most criminal organizations.
Isn't that interesting how sophisticated these organizations are? I have to keep reminding myself of that. And, I know you guys have done at Delinea, you've done a lot of research on where we're at and what we're currently seeing with these trends. And it's so important to be aware of these trends so that we can have the right response and mitigation plans. So wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what you guys are seeing and what we need to be aware of right now.
Sure, absolutely. So every year, Delinea does ransomware research. We look at some of the trends, We saw, in 2022, ransomware dip quite a bit. Actually, it was on the decline. A lot of that was, through sanctions, not getting organizations not getting their data back. There was also a change in the geopolitical landscape as well at that time, where we started seeing attacks in things like North America and Europe decline, but attacks in Latin America and Africa increase. So one of the things we do every year is we look at what's the trends and what's the kind of preferred methods. So getting into some of those key takeaways from the research we did recently is that ransomware and its impact is becoming it's devastating for organizations. And we've seen in 2023 the rise of ransomware kind of pull back and gain momentum and accelerate. More organizations are agreeing to paying. Some of that can be influenced through things like cyber insurance, where cyber insurance is really putting organizations, pressuring them to pay, rather than the cyber insurance having to pay out large amounts. Sometimes that paying the ransom sometimes is a little bit cheaper than trying to rebuild the organization from scratch. Revenue is the biggest impact. Organizations, when they look at basically their finances, it's the revenue of the organizations has the biggest impact. We also look at, doesn't necessarily mean having a bigger security budget means you can have better security. We've also found that it really comes down to how you spend it. Many organizations do have dedicated ransomware budgets specifically to mitigate and to put money away for when attacks do happen. And one area as well is that we do see as executives, they're concerned and they're it's a top priority. But unfortunately, while the boards are talking about ransomware, they're not effectively following through with the investments and taking action. It's something that they talk about, but not all boards really look to put plans and strategies in place to mitigate it. And as I mentioned, a lot of the attacks are becoming multiple layered attacks, where exfiltration is one of those top areas. But also cloud and applications has overtaken email as the top attack vectors. So they're now looking, rather than you getting an email and the ransomware starting from that area, now they're targeting the cloud environments and applications through things like APIs, looking through development repositories for hard-coded keys and tokens. And also organizations are investing in privileged access as one of the top ways to mitigate. And incident response plans are getting heavily tested. So many organizations have invested in incident response plans, but they're getting quickly adopted, but they're also getting quickly used. And that's one of the areas where it's being tested, how well the readiness is.
Well, and that readiness often relies on sort of early alerting, right? Part of the plan has to be, you have to know that you've been attacked and then immediately know how to take action. And I would assume that you need that fast response time as much as you need to know what happens next.
Absolutely. So one of the things is that it's always interesting how organizations find out. Is you're most
Right.
likely going to find out from external sources. You don't find out yourself by all of a sudden you're getting an alarm saying, okay, you're not the first person.
Ransom.
Typically,
Yeah.
law enforcement are one of the first to find out because they're taking down a lot of the infrastructure, and sometimes that's when they find out about victims because their information is basically contained within those command and control servers. Sometimes you find out from your partners and customers. The attackers, the most common way I see is attackers contacting them directly. And a lot of the ransomware cases that I've been involved in and helping organizations recover, that's been the preferred method is the attackers reaching out. They have information about the security team, the incident response, the IT team, and they contact them directly, sometimes in their personal, even mobile devices, or through their own emails. You see, sometimes in social media tends to be the more bragging, rights. It's about getting popularity and visibility. Employees, sometimes they log into systems and get that pop-up notification. And then also security researchers. I've been actually one of those security researchers who has notified organizations. In one specific incident that I was working on, I found evidence of other victims within the logs and the data. And I got permission to proactively reach out. And this was a large organization in the sports area. And I reached out and said, hey, I'm working on this other case, and I find evidence that you're also a victim. Maybe we can work together. And they came back and said, no, you're wrong. We were not a victim of ransomware. And I'm thinking, how could that be? Because I'm looking at your data. I've got it in front of me. So I responded again saying, maybe you don't know you're a victim yet. Maybe this is an opportunity to stop it. Maybe it's in the progress of happening. And it went silent. And then at the end of it was about 3 months later when I had to gather up all of the evidence that and the forensics and pass it over. I was passing it to the legal team and law enforcement for further, investigation later. And when I was doing that, I said, should let this organization know that I'm now passing over data that points back to them. So I sent one last communication saying, hey, just to let you know, I understand that you said you weren't a victim, but I'm now having to pass over the evidence. And law enforcement may or may not contact you in the near future because they're going to see the data I was looking at. And immediately afterwards, I get a response saying, you were right. We were a victim. We paid. We wanted to hide it up. We don't want anyone to know about it. So please don't say anything. And it was interesting that they hid it. And still to this date, there's no public information about them ever being a victim of ransomware. So it's interesting how you find out. And that's one of the things that, you had to be prepared and you had to be open. You had to make sure that those channels are available for you to find out, because the speed is the utmost importance.
Well, it is the most important, and that being ready with that
Mm.
response and being ready with that plan. And as you just gave as an example, there are lots of different styles of response. Some maybe a little bit more private, and some a
Yeah.
little bit more public. And in this case, it sounds like they paid the ransom and just tried to kind of move on. So I guess I'm curious, in your experience and from what you've seen, what are the best responses? What should you be doing if you are a victim, and is one kind of response a little more effective than the others, or any best practices that you'd recommend there?
Absolutely. So organizations who do become victims, they tend to have very few choices.
Mm.
Typically it's, you ideally, if you become a victim and you're dealing with a, crypto version of ransomware, restoring from the backup. That's the ideal scenario. You want to restore to a known good state. And that's actually most organizations in the past couple of years, they've invested heavily in ransomware resistant backup and restore plans. But in many cases, I've seen the backups also being encrypted. So the attackers, before they start kind of notifying you, they want to make sure that they've got as many of the backups encrypted as well. So that's one of the methods. I've seen one victim recently where they had 3 backups, and all of the backups were encrypted, and they ultimately end up paying the ransom. So again, if you don't have the backup to go to, paying the ransom then becomes the next option. Sometimes that becomes also pressured under the cyber insurance companies. Will try to pressure that. So sometimes that becomes, and if you have a cyber insurance, sometimes you don't even have a choice of not paying, because you're passing over the data recovery responsibility to the insurer. The last option tends to be, you rebuild from what you have. There's a fourth option. Sometimes the command and controls and servers do get taken down from the criminal organizations, and law enforcement do get the decryption key, which has happened recently, but it's not always guaranteed. So I don't always put that up here. But getting into that, one of the things is to your point is what's the best practices? How do you mitigate? How do you prepare? So I do recommend having that incident response checklist. And this is a checklist that I've used quite commonly and helped organizations put in place. It's important to keep it updated, and it's important to keep sometimes a hard copy. I've seen organizations that do have incident response plans that do get encrypted with the ransomware, and it becomes inaccessible at the time. So it's important to have multiple copies available in different ways. But clear definition of ownership and communications is so critical. Be aware that if the attackers have access to your network, they have also access to your communications. If you've got some type of messaging app or data sharing, they'll have visibility to that. So it's always important to have out of band alternative communications, clear updated contact lists as well. Having connections with law enforcement, incident response organizations, and also respond accordingly to the right definition. Ransomware tends to hit all of those CIA triad, which hits the confidentiality. It impacts integrity of the data and availability of the services. Understanding what you have capability of doing, external capabilities of third-party retainers. How do you contain? Having a press statement ready to go, and not trying to do press statements basically in the middle of a ransomware case. You also have to think about your legal situation. A lot of regulatory and compliance requirements require you to report and disclose ransomware incidents. And there's the case, of course, the SEC updated their ransomware kind of filings and reporting back in December, late last year. And if you don't report, then you could become, under a kind of legal situation with the SEC. It was interesting earlier this year, cyber criminals who did gain access and did impact where the ransomware criminals didn't get the payment from the victim. They ended up filing the 8K form themselves with the SEC, which was an interesting scenario because then they become the victim, the real victim, does become a bit challenged with with now reporting with the SEC. Then you want to get into eradication, recovery, and ultimately learn from those lessons and improve going forward. But the important part here is having the checklist is critical, but simulating it and practicing it is so vital as well. You want to make sure that the first time you're actually practicing it is not in a real life scenario.
Yeah, the reflection, I think the reflection point, learning lessons, evolving, not just that we make this incident report or incident plan once, but that we're constantly updating and evaluating our planning process and making sure that it's not just a static, check and done.
Yeah,
And I think, Joseph, you had a little bit of, we can see this in action, right? You have a little demo for us.
Absolutely, I do have an example, and this is a shortened version of basically a real world ransomware attack. And
Awesome.
I've been fortunate enough I've helped organizations recover, rebuild, and get back.
Yeah.
Some have been better situations than others, and some have it's been cost up to millions of dollars in recovery costs. And some, it's really important to make sure that you understand. And one victim has allowed me to share a replica of one of their incidents. I'm not allowed to talk about who and when and where, but they want to show the lessons that they had into sharing with others about what happened with them, so that other organizations can learn from this and put the right controls in place to mitigate it. So let me go ahead and show you. It's always good to see the live stuff, and I think this is really important. So what it's a supply chain of criminal organizations. There's those who specialize in access brokers, who steal credentials, they phish, they social engineer, they get the usernames and passwords of employees, and then they sell them. So there's those initial access brokers, and that's what they specialize. But then there's the hands-on keyboard attackers, who what they'll do is they'll get ransomware as a service. So they'll basically become affiliates of ransomware creators. They'll buy those credentials, and ultimately what they end up doing is they'll validate those credentials work, and they'll log in. They just log in like any regular user does. This particular incident, it was actually an accountant system that had been compromised. So now the attackers are logging into that accountant system, and then they start looking around for what type of credentials do they have. Sometimes they'll look in the desktop, they'll find clear text files with passwords and usernames. They'll look in the browser history, they'll look in the browser saved passwords. In this case, they hit the jackpot. They find out that this user that they compromised is their local administrator on the system. So it means that we can make configuration changes. So one of the first things that the attackers will do is they'll go and download their tools. They'll disable security on this system. And then once they've downloaded their tools and disabled security, they can use tools like Mimikatz. But before they do that, they'll make some registry changes that then allows passwords to be stored in clear text. Once they've done that, they will then run a script, and that script will then dump the credentials from passwords from registry and memory, and then they can go look at that password dump. And they're basically running this consistently over time, and this time they hit the jackpot. They've been able to get a domain administrator account who logged into the system. Once they have that domain administrator, they'll validate that the actual account works to make sure that it's still valid and is functional. So they'll try and log into the domain controller. Once they log in, they will then search around and see, what other ways can they put some backdoors in place, create additional users, just in case at some point that this user gets changed or organization is able to lock it down and prevent their access. They've got other ways of returning. At this point in time, it's typically only about 4 hours before disaster strikes. So an attacker gains the domain administrator, they validate it works, they will then go and launch it, and they'll launch it on as many systems as they possibly can with that domain administrator account. And this is ultimately what the victim sees in the end, is they'll see this pop up. And this particular ransomware variant is the Krylock, which was the Krylock 2.0, which is a ransomware as a service. The prior version to this was known as Cryakle, which surfaced around 2018, 2019, and then disappeared. And then Krylock was the new variant. And you can see here, if you pay up within 2 days, you get a 50% discount. In 4 days, your data is gone. So ultimately, this is what it looks like for an organization to become a victim. And you can see there's multiple areas along the way. Is making sure passwords are not the only thing protecting your credentials, making sure you've got a solid backup in place, looking at making sure you're not using domain administrator to log into different systems. So the attackers, this is just a snippet of what happens, but it's really important to make sure that you mitigate against these.
Ugh, it kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. I have to say, like, I just the 50% discount, buy now, like it feels like a Black Friday sale, and they're like marketing our own data back to us, and yeah, I don't know. It feels a little creepy. Okay, so
just to give you an example of what that 50% discount sometimes looks like, it's about 5 million euros, $6 million. That's the discount.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, okay. That's yeah, we're not talking about the $20 t-shirt you bought on Black Friday. We're talking big. Okay. So obviously these are really impactful, and this is scary to see. And I do want to add in a quick note there. Very much appreciate the organization that's allowing you to share that, because I do think these learning opportunities are so important. So for somebody out there that's maybe feeling that little sense of heebie-jeebies that I've got going, what do we do, Joseph? Help us. Help us start.
So there's things that many organizations could put some best practices in place that really significantly mitigates this. So here's some of my top tips in organizations. One is become educated, learn about this, learn about it as much as you possibly can about the different variants, different techniques it's used. So good education, cyber hygiene, that's where it starts. Then having that solid backup and test plan, and one that's ransomware resilient. Not having it on a flat network, not having the same credentials, having access to production and the backup, making sure you segment as much as you possibly can, and have an offline copy. That can sometimes be the difference. And the victim that I just went through, they were fortunate enough that what they had was they had a 1-year-old server that had been migrated, and that was sitting under the desk gathering dust. And that saved their business. That ultimately saved the business, was having that machine that was offline and not becoming a victim. The other areas is having the principle of least privilege, and this is about making sure you don't have overprivileged users like the accountant who had local administrator access. That's a bad scenario. Having privileged access management that can rotate credentials and passwords so that those clear text passwords are no longer valid, and preventing the attacker from moving around and getting access to the domain controller. Application control, preventing malicious applications from executing, and then having just a good patch and updating of security in the organizations. If you follow these, you will significantly reduce the possibility of you becoming a victim.
Which are some really important tips and action steps. And I want to kind of segue that into the human side of this. So the folks out there in our audience are making these plans, and hopefully we're all avoiding this very terrible, no good, rotten day. But knowing the stats out there on the day that we're facing that, ideally what we're doing here with all this planning is reducing the impact to the team, reducing the impact to the folks here with us today, and what they're going to be working through on that terrible, no good, rotten day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I want to kind of emphasize the importance is that in all the cases I've worked in, is that I realized that one of the cases I worked in a few years ago, I saw a lot of the team burn out afterwards, and it made me realize that as I come in, I'm helping and getting organizations back. The actual toll on people's mental health during these situations is significant. And some of the cases it made me realize that actually, during those cases, we need to take care of the people, making sure they've got food to eat, making sure they get somewhere to sleep, making sure you're rotating them, making sure you've got even psychologists who can talk to them afterwards, because these are significant. They're working through around the clock, not knowing if tomorrow they're going to have a job or if the business is going to survive. And it's such a stressful environment to be in. So one of the things I always say is that during these is that while having an incident response plan is critical, but also making sure that part of that incident response plan takes care of the people during these incidents and making sure they're actually getting the rest, making sure they're getting the support that they need, because it is a crisis situation. And during those times, a lot of people end up with post-traumatic stress afterwards. So mental health for me is one of the top things that organizations should actually prioritize as part of their incident response plan.
Whew. That's so impactful. And Joseph, I want to kind of make that. I wish I didn't have to say this, but we are at the end of our time. And so we are going to have to wrap this up. But I think that is such an impactful place to end our conversation, because that's a really important takeaway, one that I'm sure often gets forgotten. I hope that most of you out there kind of went, oh, and are writing that down somewhere to follow up and make that plan to take care of your people as part of that incident response planning. Joseph, I'm thinking maybe one way that we can sort of bring things to a close would be to give people some next steps for learning a little bit more in follow up to this chat, and then maybe how they could get started with Delinea.
Absolutely. So one of the things I've created every year is different research reports and white papers that really show to educate and become aware of these types of attacks, and also some of the best practices and where to get started. So we've recently released our research white paper, which is the State of Ransomware report for 2024, and it really helps organizations. You can compare yourself with your peers. You can see how you kind of fit into this, and also some of the things that you can strategies to help you get on your way to becoming ransomware resilient. So definitely highly recommend for the audience to definitely download a copy of the report. And areas that Delinea can help is we can help you get control of those privileged accounts, to rotate the passwords, to make sure passwords are not the only security control in place, to make sure that it's difficult for attackers to laterally move. Ultimately, one thing is, when attackers do see a solution like a privileged access management solution in place, it tends to deters them. They know that this is going to be challenging for them, that it's going to spend a lot more time doing these types of attacks, and they move on to the next victim. So sometimes even just seeing, they know that it's going to create a lot of noise. They don't want to create noise. They want to stay stealthy. So they move on to other victims. And that's one of the things that Delinea can help, is helping with that principle, least privilege, zero trust strategy, and making sure passwords are moved into the background and not the only security control in place.
I love that. All right. Well, as I said, Joseph, I'm so sorry to wrap up this conversation, because it's been so much fun and we've all learned a ton, but we've got some great action steps, some great things to think about, and some ways to reach out and follow up with Delinea. So I think we'll leave it there. We'll have to continue this conversation another time. I hope that happens soon. And thank you so much for joining us here today.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the time.
Righty, Jess and Joseph, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. That was a really engaging conversation, and it's just too bad we have to keep things moving along. So, if you are looking for a little more information about the Delinea solution, I've got another poll up there. Just plunk in your answer. Again, your feedback is very valuable, and this is just the easiest way to get exactly what you're looking for the quickest. So why not participate and throw that in there? We don't have time to do a live Q&A session here with Joseph, but he is on live chat. So I know a bunch of you have thrown in questions, and he's going to be fielding some of those during the MegaCast here in order to make sure you get some information. And beyond that, there'll always be some follow-ups as well. So we've got you taken care of. Now, with that, let's keep things moving along. I do have another prize to give away. Oh, before we do the prize, just a reminder, the handouts tab of your console there. If you have not yet checked it out, you absolutely must. The PDFs in there are super valuable. And the one from Delinea is a super cool ebook. This ebook is Conversation Cyber Insurance. The book is sponsored by Delinea and a really cool resource. It's also PDF, so you probably won't find it online. So make sure you grab the file now and you'll be able to look it over. All right, now prizes. Again, you must be live and present here to win. You must be lucky. So I'm hoping you are all of these things. And without further ado, our next lucky winner for the $300 Amazon gift card is Cedric Castillo from Illinois. And for the first MacBook going out today is Carlos Wells from Georgia. Congratulations, Cedric and Carlos. And as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar. And don't forget, there are still several more chances to win, plus those best question gift cards. So keep interactive, keep on the line, and hopefully you are lucky on the next round. Now, next up on today's MegaCast, we have Nasuni bringing us timely and practical information about ransomware readiness. I am super pleased to introduce you to Anne Blanchard. Anne Blanchard is the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Nasuni. And thank you so much for being here today. I'll be joining you for some Q&A, but until that happens, I'm just going to hand things over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Can everybody hear me?
You're sounding
Doing a
good on
quick
my
sound
end.
check. All right, wonderful. Thanks so much. Well, welcome everybody, and appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit more about Nasuni and our approach to helping you avoid the disaster that is ransomware. We are all aware that the key to ransomware readiness is sort of multi-part. And what we wanted to do is sort of lay out a lot of the components that really go in organizationally to making you ransomware ready. Definitely want to think about having an immutable storage strategy. That's what we're going to talk about in a little bit more depth. You want to have a mitigation and rapid recovery solution on hand, preferably one that starts at your storage base of your whole IT stack, and that conforms to some of the well-accepted, frameworks out there that checks all the boxes, such as the NIST framework, and we'll get into that in a little bit. And enterprise visibility, as we're finding more and more when we go and talk to our customers, security is an enterprise-wide undertaking, and the more visibility your security experts have to what's going on in each individual component of your IT stack, the better, because they're able to see patterns and warn other parts of the company, if you will, on attacks, and basically take an overall defensive posture that's much stronger than any individual product can provide. Reporting and compliance. This is key to that ransomware readiness, because folks need to be able to say what happened, when it happened, what exactly the time frame was, and the nature of the attack was, for insurance reasons, but also to understand how to protect and prevent another attack of a similar type. And of course, just to learn, to create the learning curve inside the organization. And I think, as a previous speaker referred to, training your teams over and over again, sort of disaster preparedness on the response steps to a ransomware attack, having practice sessions, making sure everybody on the team knows what their role is really key to preventing some of that initial panic that can very quickly actually cascade into, additional damage if folks are not sort of calmly going about the steps that you might have mapped out as part of your strategy. So training's a really important part of the whole disaster preparedness in this situation. We have seen with our customer base and in general that one of the most insidious things about ransomware is that they tend to hit more than once. And so companies will have the experience of doing a massive recovery and all hands on deck, fantastic response, getting the business back up and running, only to find a couple of days later they have to go through the same thing all over again. So the repeatability of your recovery strategy is actually a really important factor you want to think about. And it doesn't lend itself well to the more traditional backup and data protection strategies, because a lot of those strategies take some time. They do restore your data, but they might take hours or days or even months sometimes. And that's just not a workable approach in an environment like we're in, where attacks keep coming, and once they've decided that you're potentially a target, they might hit you multiple times. The impact of ransomware, I think we've covered a lot of that today in a number of presentations, but I can't overemphasize that it's more than just losing some data. It's reputation, it's customer loyalty, it can be a sizable percentage of your market value. But what we've also learned is that it's all in how you handle it. And there are actually some examples of companies whose market value has gone back up above where it was, just by showing competence in handling an attack and showing that they were prepared and they had that resilience in place. So it does not have to be a complete downward disaster in terms of your overall company trajectory. It can be something that's strengthening if you really commit yourself to preparedness. And the key to that, of course, is not just detection, it's mitigation and recovery, and that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit with Nasuni. An attack footprint can spread so rapidly. We had a customer who wasn't aware they were under attack and had 350,000 files corrupted just in the space of a weekend. It could probably be a lot worse. I'm sure some of you out there have experienced worse. The point is, if you can respond to an attack, no matter how it's been designed, earlier, you're going to lower the footprint significantly, no matter what kind of an attack it is, and you're going to mitigate the damage. So, every company is vulnerable to attack. There's lots of great detection processes out there. The key is, once that attack has happened, it has penetrated your defenses, how quickly can you stop it and mitigate the kind of damage that it might do to your organization? I made a reference to the NIST framework because what we're finding is that security is jointly owned inside of most IT departments. It's not something that's exclusively the responsibility of the CISO or the SecOps team. It's also the responsibility of the infrastructure team, the team that puts storage in place and servers and networks in place. And in order for those two or sometimes 3 or 4 different parts of infrastructure to work together, they need a kind of a common framework for what's important and what isn't. And the NIST framework provides a little bit of a common language for CISOs and infrastructure leaders to have a conversation, because it maps out the key elements that should be there in order to be ready for a ransomware attack. Namely, can we identify the source of the attack? Can we protect ourselves when we're under attack, which typically implies some sort of immutable storage in the background? Can we detect the attacks early enough? Can we respond, and can we mitigate those, and can we recover? Recovery is key because, as I said before, we're all vulnerable to attacks. Some attacks are going to get through. So what is the recovery time frame? Nasuni is a hybrid cloud storage platform that is completely cloud native. However, it delivers very, very local high-speed performance through kind of a hybrid architecture of having local cache edge appliances. And every single file that's created locally goes to the cloud and is stored in what we call a gold copy, an immutable copy in the cloud. And any changes to that file are also stored in an immutable copy. So it's basically impossible to go back and change a previous version of the file. And every version is stored in an immutable copy. That can mean you have thousands and thousands of versions of a file. It's actually just the deltas, so it's not consuming very much storage at all. But every single delta is an immutable copy of its own in the cloud. And that is a key part of our defense in depth for our customers in terms of protecting them from ransomware damage. In addition to that, data that's stored in Nasuni is encrypted end-to-end and is secure basically in the full movement cycle to the cloud and back down to people requesting it. But what we've added recently is a set of capabilities to the platform that take this defense up a level and really bring it more in compliance with that NIST framework. And the importance of this is that a lot of companies don't realize, but an enormous amount of data is in their file shares. An enormous amount of their data, sometimes up to 80% of the company's total data footprint is actually in file shares. It could be distributed across multiple offices and locations, on servers that are sitting in the corners of the offices. It could be in the data center. And all those distributed locations need backup, need protection. And what we're finding is that very large footprint actually presents a significant attack surface and makes companies more vulnerable to attack on their file data than perhaps other data, simply because maybe it's not backed up every night in every location. or different offices don't have the same restore procedures. And so if you have an attack that spreads across locations, how are you going to have your team ready to do a simple restore across both of them? And of course, tape is still in use, and backing up is great to tape, but recovering from tape can be really, really slow. So these sort of distributed environments lend themselves well to moving to a hybrid architecture where all that data is now in the cloud, but it's still available locally, at speed with, no cloud latency as a factor at all. So what the platform provides is it actually can eliminate the need for traditional file backup and recovery. It can dramatically reduce the cyber attack impact if you implement our ransomware solution on top of the platform. And there's a single workflow now as part of the platform that really goes from attack detection to stopping the attack to identifying the scope of the attack and then to mitigating and recovering from the attack. It's all one workflow that's built into our solution. The thing that's really changed about storage over the last couple of years is that increasingly cyber resilience is expected to be built into your storage solution. And there's a simple reason for that. Your storage is, in a sense, your baseline. It's at the edge of your operations. No matter where you are doing your computing, you're going to have a storage layer that you need to be working with. And to have detection at that level is really planning to have detection at the earliest possible moment. So we've designed our solution to literally detect ransomware at the edge. The minute a corrupted file, a file with the wrong extension shows up, sorry, I got a little interrupt on the line here. Apologies for that. The minute that a ransomware attack, or excuse me, a file with a ransomware extension shows up, our solution will detect it. Likewise, once behaviors that look suspicious start to get detected, again, at the edge, lots of deletions, lots of file extension changes, strange behaviors get detected, again, at the edge, not later on during a backup check or some sort of delayed scan of your data. The platform itself protects your data, as I said, with an immutable approach. Every single file change gets stored as an immutable object in the cloud. And likewise, as a platform, it provides extremely fast recovery. We have a really great demo on our website where we show 1 million files getting restored in less than a minute. That's because all the versions are there in the cloud, and you simply have to dial back to the versions that are clean and untampered with, and hit play, and essentially your users start drawing on those files, those clean files, right away. And so it's an incredibly fast restore that is just life-changing for a lot of our customers when they've actually experienced an attack. So what we've added to that now with our service is this detection capability and this response capability. So a live attack gets detected, suspicious file activity, suspicious patterns get detected. Depending on what tolerance levels you've set in the service, you get a warning sooner or after maybe a few different types of this behavior. You get to set that level, and you're notified immediately. And as soon as it crosses the threshold that you've set, the system shuts down the source of that attack immediately. Now, that may mean that some of your users don't have access to those files or to files in a certain location temporarily, but we found our customers find that much better scenario than not stopping an attack soon. So the source of the attack gets stopped immediately, and then we go into a set of mitigation capabilities. And typically, our customers will set their thresholds very low, maybe 50, 100, a couple of hundred files max being impacted by this behavior or by extension changes, and they want to know. They don't want to wait hours. They don't want to wait days for something to sit in the system and potentially be a threat. So it's typically set at a very low threshold, and then they're able to respond. The alternative to this, of course, is traditional backup and other solutions that rely on sort of a secondary copy of the data. And again, the question you have to ask as you look at solutions like this is, how quickly does the data come back online? What's the recovery period? That's a very important parameter, because that's key to getting your business back up and running as quickly as possible. So as I mentioned, we do this detection in real time of threats as they come into the edge, and the system intervenes, at the threshold that you set it. Now, what happens after that is that the scope of the attack is identified in what we call an incident report. And an incident report will tell you exactly when the data corruption started, exactly which files were impacted. It gives you really a complete timeline when the source of the attack was shut down, and gives us all a simple report that you can share with your SecOps team, your insurance provider, any of those folks that need that reporting from you to basically understand how the companies respond or what responses are needed. And that report gives you control as well, because you can decide with a simple click to restore all those files or a portion of them if you confirm, in fact, that they've been corrupted. So you're not left guessing what was impacted. And what we find with our customers is that's incredibly time-consuming part of a ransomware attack, is really nailing down where did it hit us, what files were hit, how many, and where is the backup copy for those files. With this solution from Nasuni, you basically get this report. If you decide you want to restore all these files, you hit a button, literally, and all those files are restored to the cleanest, best possible copy that you have in the cloud. So it does provide you with a very streamlined restore process, very key details that you need for your management and also for your long-term planning around security, and it gives you a very precise recovery path. So I'll finish up with an actual scenario where basically we know of customers that had an attack and they were aware of it from an earlier version of the product that was just detection. But over the course of the weekend, over 360,000 files were corrupted because there was no intervention. It was happening over the weekend. No one was paying attention to exactly what was happening with this file corruption because it was a weekend. And those files were all permanently damaged. And it took multiple hours to manually identify the files. It took multiple hours to identify the damage, and then the restore process had to begin after that. With the full solution from Nasuni with ransomware protection, that entire process basically took less than 15 minutes. Stopping the attack, knowing the scope of it, and hitting restore and recovering. So speed is really important here. Training your team on how to respond is really important here. And what we've tried to do with our customers is help them with this solution, basically have the confidence that even if they face multiple attacks over the course of a week, and we do have some customers who are hit very frequently, they can literally recover and get back to business. And I hate to say it, but treat it as almost business as usual with their file data being recovered back to a level that's quite useful for them and able to allow them to run their business at the speed that they need to. Recovery is key, mitigation is key, training is key. So that's really what the Nasuni solution is about, and I would love to take questions now or talk with folks who would like to know more about this.
Thank you so much, Anne. We definitely have some questions here to pose to you from the audience. So let's do that. If any of you do want to get in touch with Anne, you'll see her contact info up on the slide there now. And in maybe about 30 seconds, I'm just going to throw up a poll as well, asking what information you're going to look for from Nasuni, and they'll be able to hand it right over to you. So watch for that in just a sec. But if you do want to jot down and contact, go ahead and do that now. And Anne, let's dive into it. First question I have here is, are there specific challenges when integrating with legacy systems, and how does Nasuni address them?
Well, Nasuni is a hybrid cloud storage solution for file shares. And essentially what we do is we migrate customers' file data that's on their legacy systems. It might be NetApp or Isilon or Windows file servers into our UniFS global file system in the cloud. And then we help them set up their edge appliances with the caching that's finely tuned to the performance needs of their individual locations. And so it behaves exactly like a normal file system. The letters might be new for the volume names or the directory names, but it looks and feels to the end user exactly like their regular file system. So the end users essentially do not notice that they're now operating on a cloud platform.
Okay.
And that's really, that's really the beauty of it, is it doesn't change end user behavior at all, essentially.
Perfect. So non-disruptive, seamless, and again, we always want to keep things from disrupting the end users. That's great.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I have a question here that kind of piggybacks on that one. This one's asking, how does Nasuni help organizations address the challenges of managing growing volumes of unstructured data? So kind of scalability, how do you guys approach that?
Oh, it's a great question. So Nasuni is, as I said, a cloud-native file system. That means that the entire file system, including the directories and the number of files, is all set up in the cloud initially. It's not constrained by any sort of hardware specifications that might have limited a file system in the past. Even if you take a legacy file system off of a legacy system and put it in the cloud, from a design standpoint, it's still going to have limits because it was designed for hardware. Ours was not. Ours was designed for the cloud. What that means is that your volumes can be any size. You can have as many files as you want in those volumes and as many directories. And the files themselves can be any size. And in fact, we have a lot of design customers, working in engineering and architecture, construction, or media, entertainment, who have files, in the hundreds of gigabytes that have no problem going into the Nasuni platform. And anytime there's a need for more capacity in a specific volume, it's very easy to add more storage. And essentially what we tell customers, it's unlimited. So if you need a platform that just grows naturally with the growth of your unstructured data, that's what it provides. Now, of course, customers are also going to want to trim that data. They're going to want to pare it down, either to control costs or just to get rid of data that's no longer needed. And we provide really powerful analytical tools that help them do that as well.
Incredible. Cleaning up shop. I like it. Okay.
Exactly.
A couple more questions here. This one is, why is detection at the edge needed and important?
Well, it's really something that comes down to that picture I showed of the small virus versus the big virus. It's how long do you want the attack to fester in your environment before you take action? And edge is where data is getting created. Edge is where new data from the outside is coming in. So if you're stopping an attack at the edge, you're stopping it almost as soon as the data itself is coming into your environment. You really can't get much sooner than that. if you're waiting until you're looking at data that's in a backup system, or you're scanning it in sort of your regular long-term storage, you might be waiting several hours, if not a full day, before you're actually looking for the ransomware attack or signs of the ransomware attack. So
Gotcha.
Edge is superior in that respect.
Beautiful. Okay, last question, just in terms of time here. This one is, what integration options does Nasuni offer with existing IT infrastructure and third-party applications?
Well, we run well with a whole number of applications that customers use, obviously as part of their file infrastructure, whether it's Adobe or BIM 360 or Autodesk or that sort of thing. But from a security standpoint, we have very good integration with Varonis. And they sort of do different things in terms of long-term data compliance and also security, but we partner very well with them in terms of providing a total security solution.
Gotcha.
We also, I'm sorry, I neglected to mention a really important one also as well, which is Nasuni integrates with Sentinel from Microsoft. And it was actually our customers who insisted that we provide that integration, because Sentinel is the tool for your SecOps team if you're in an Azure environment, even actually it can be mixed environments, to monitor events across the entire organization and know what's going on from a security standpoint. So we made that integration, and you can set up Nasuni so that it reports events immediately to your SecOps team through Sentinel. And they know what's going on, and they know the steps that have been taken to mitigate it.
Oh, fantastic. And I know a lot of people are on Azure and using that Sentinel, so incredible. Well, any last call to action if anyone wants to get started, or last comments to just kind of leave people with about Nasuni before we move on to the next?
Yeah, no, I really encourage folks to visit our website. I see a question in here about do we provide our own storage, or does Nasuni provide storage? We actually partner with Google, AWS, and Azure as our back-end storage. So you essentially bring your own object storage to your Nasuni solution. But we also do private cloud. So we're cloud agnostic is the answer to that. But what I'd like to finish up with is I really encourage folks to visit our website, take a look at the ransomware use case, take a look at the demo in the Resource Center, and see for yourself. And then, of course, if you're interested, we would love to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time here today, and looking forward to next time having you on a different MegaCast or EcoCast coming up.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Take care. All right. If you have not yet filled out the poll, it is up there live. So make sure you request whatever you're looking for in terms of follow-up information from Nasuni. And if your question didn't get answered today, apologies. There's just only so much time, and I know there's a lot of inquisitive folks out there. But again, thank you for answering those sending in those questions, and they will be answered and followed up upon after the MegaCast as well. If you have not yet visited that handouts tab, go check it out. There is a data sheet from Nasuni that's talking about the Nasuni ransomware protection and the file data platform add-on service. So take a look at that. It's in the PDF format, easy to grab, easy to download, and definitely worth holding on to look at after today's final presentation. And with that, I do have another prize giveaway before we kind of move on to our fourth and final presenting team. So if you are hoping to win something today, this might be your chance to win. Again, you must be live and present here to win on today's webinar. And with that, our next $300 Amazon gift card is going out to Ruth Means from Oklahoma. Congratulations, Ruth. And the second MacBook Air is going out to Ben Madron from Virginia. Congratulations, Ruth and Ben. As always, we'll be in touch after the webinar about claiming your prize. And for now, let's keep things moving along and jump into our fourth and final presentation on the MegaCast today. I am sure some of you are going to recognize this name. We've got our friends from Rubrik back in the house. And we have Veer Choksi, the Senior Product Marketing Manager of Data Security at Rubrik here to chat with us and give us a lowdown on Rubrik's solution in terms of building your ransomware readiness plan. Veer, thank you so much for being here today, and I'll let you take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Veer Choksi. I'm with Rubrik, and I've been here for about 2 years. Now, my goal here is to explain how you can use your own data to improve your cyber defense, and also to introduce data threat analytics, which is a set of capabilities that can help you detect threats better so that you can recover from cyber incidents quickly and confidently. And this presentation is geared towards both the IT and the security audience. Now, we all know that the cyber threat landscape has become challenging over the past few years. There's many reasons for this. The attack surface has grown a lot. Users are more distributed, and we have much more complex hybrid environments than in the past. It's also easy to become a cyber criminal, especially with ransomware as a service providers. So the barrier for entry for becoming a cyber criminal is a lot lower than it used to be. And also cybercrime remains financially rewarding. Now, before getting into my main content, I want to set the stage with some research from Rubrik Zero Labs, which is our threat research unit. We commission market research, we use third-party information, and also telemetry from Rubrik customers. 99% of IT and security leaders were made aware of at least one attack in 2022. Now, it isn't always ransomware necessarily. It could be data deletion, whether by a malicious actor or an insider or even accidental. And it could be politically motivated rather than financially motivated. But the bottom line is that cyber incidents are denial of data attacks. And when your data is down, your business is down. And on average, leaders dealt with attacks 52 times in 2022. So that's roughly once per week. Now, 93% of organizations reported malicious actors attempting to impact their data backups. Backups are often your last line of defense, and if your backups are not available and clean, the victim is much more likely to decide to pay a ransom to the cyber criminals. Now, about 73% of those efforts were at least partially successful. And so backups are something that both IT and security teams have an interest in. Now, out of over 27 million analyzed snapshots, about 21,000 of those contained anomalous activity. That's about 0.07% of the total. About 1,200 encountered an encryption event, and that's 0.004% of total. Now, notably, 100% of encryption events were previously identified as anomalous, and 100% of encryption events were tied to a lack of multi-factor authentication. Now, the number of impacted files could range from thousands to the millions. And nearly 3/4 of observed encryption events affected virtualization infrastructure. Now, traditionally, cybersecurity has focused on infrastructure security around prevention and detection in your production systems. But despite significant investments in infrastructure security and prevention tools, the risk of breaches can only be reduced. They can't be completely eliminated. Attackers are still penetrating these defenses. And so just as important as reducing the likelihood of a successful attack is reducing the impact of an attack. How quickly can business as usual be restored if an attack were to happen? And how can you, as a potential victim, make informed decisions to enable a successful recovery? Now, in spite of the security tools that are in place, there are still blind spots that can make recovery painful and drawn out. So malware might be lurking in your infrastructure. Endpoint detection and response tools can detect threats on devices, but they typically won't alert you to threats that are present on servers because they usually aren't deployed there. Second, it's difficult to accurately assess the blast radius of an attack, which could leave you in the dark on what exactly you need to recover. And third, it's not easy to determine when a threat entered your environment, and this could lead to reinfection and prolonged recovery. So all of these blind spots can increase overall cyber risk and increase downtime. So what if you could leverage your existing backup data to investigate threats and recover with greater speed and confidence? Everybody has backups already, right? So the main thrust of this presentation is that your own backup data can be a rich source of intelligence to improve your overall cyber resilience. Now, I'm sure that most folks have seen the federal government's cybersecurity framework: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And they're actually thinking of adding another phase, govern, but for now, these are the 5 phases. So let's focus in on the detect piece. Teams are asking questions like, can we determine the cause and blast radius? Can we minimize data loss? Can we determine the first point of infection? How can we easily conduct indicator of compromise or IOC sweeps without impacting production workloads? And how confident are we that an attacker is not present in our environment? Those sorts of questions can be addressed with data threat analytics. Now, data threat analytics refers to the ability to continuously monitor your data for risks and detect cyber threats. So the basic theory here is that if you're taking regular backup snapshots, you're in a good position to recruit your own data in the fight against ransomware and other cyber incidents. And that's because you're capturing the longitudinal time series history of data if you're protecting your data with Rubrik. Now, additionally, Rubrik manages metadata, including the content, users, and access privileges, which can help to shed light on your data security posture. Now, data security posture is a topic for another day. But by scanning hundreds of snapshots, Rubrik's data threat analytics engine generates signals that are fed into a highly trained machine learning model, building a historical baseline against which new data can be compared to find anomalous modifications, deletions, and encryptions. Again, we're capturing time series data from enterprise, cloud, and SaaS, feeding that data into the data threat engine, and that can result in really valuable security intelligence, shining a light on those blind spots so that you can make informed recovery decisions, and even automated remediation recommendations. So what can you do with data threat analytics? You can detect threats early by automatically identifying indicators of compromise within backups using an up-to-date feed of threat intelligence. You can determine the scope of ransomware attacks using machine learning to detect deletions, modifications, and encryptions. And you can prevent malware reinfection by analyzing the time series history of snapshots for IOCs to identify the initial point, scale, and time of infection. And because the scanning is done on backups, there's no impact to your production systems. Now let's take a look at each of these 3 services, starting with threat monitoring. So how this one works is that threat intelligence is fed into the Rubrik threat feed. The hashes and Yara rules themselves can come from different contributors. One of the contributors is Rubrik's own InfoSec team, so you can leverage the same intel that we're protecting Rubrik the business with. Intelligence can also come from Zero Labs, which is Rubrik's own threat research team, or it may come from third parties. Either way, we vet the threat intelligence prior to including it in the feed to ensure the quality of the intelligence is high and the threats are relevant to critical infrastructure environments. This intelligence gets downloaded at set time intervals. And when there's new intelligence available, a hunt will kick off automatically and search for threats based off the hashes and Yara rules. Now, should a match occur, you'll be notified right away via email. You can then drill down via the dashboard to see where the threat was located, what hash or Yara rule was matched, and find attributes associated with the hash or Yara for more background information to assist in potentially kicking off other threat hunts via Rubrik's threat hunting service or via third-party tools like a SIEM or an EDR. You can also quarantine the threat from within threat monitoring as well. So essentially, threat monitoring is a turnkey solution to help detect and protect your organization from threats. The intelligence gets downloaded automatically. Hunts based off of this intelligence will be automatic, And if any threats are found, you get notified about the threat, and any attributes associated with that threat will also be shared whenever possible. So it really is that simple. This is literally set it and forget it. The next service under the data threat analytics umbrella is anomaly detection. Now, anomaly detection provides a comprehensive approach to ransomware remediation. We use multi-stage machine learning to detect anomalies in your backup data. Those stages include observing file creations, deletions, and modifications, and comparing it to historical changes within that specific workload. In addition, entropy is analyzed to determine if ransomware-like encryption has occurred. And finally, if possible, we will identify the specific strain of ransomware as well. So if an attack has occurred, Rubrik automates the assessment of the blast radius to quickly understand what applications and files were impacted and when. And that eliminates the intensive manual labor that's usually required, such as bringing up a VM copy and manually comparing and scrubbing for changes. Finally, your backup file system has immutability. Since your data is never available in read-write mode, it can't be changed or overwritten. Fast and flexible recovery options can be used to revert back to the most recent clean version, whether using instant recovery, live mount, file level recovery, or orchestrated recovery. And that brings us to threat hunting. Threat hunting is a really powerful tool that lets you perform custom scans of your backups on demand for specific IOCs. You can identify the point of malware entry so that you can know what point in time to recover to avoid reinfection and minimize data loss. Threat hunting is both broad and deep. It allows you to scan multiple workloads and across time. It's also flexible. It can consume and search for threats via Yara rules, file hashes, and file patterns. These types of threat intelligence are industry standards. Thus, this allows you to leverage threat intelligence from various sources, such as internal sources, like your own InfoSec team, third-party intelligence services that could be paid or open source, from industry groups such as ISACs, and even government agencies that publish threat bulletins. And much like anomaly detection, threat hunts are done on backups, and thus there's no impact on your live production systems. Threat actors are unaware of ongoing hunts. And lastly, since Rubrik backups are immutable, you can identify IOCs that attackers have erased from production systems to cover their tracks. So in sum, threat hunting can shortcut the hunt for the point in time and the place where an adversary may have gained access to your infrastructure, and help to define the clean recovery point so that you're not recovering with the malware still in place. So let's look at a typical ransomware attack and how data threat analytics fits in. Bad actors will establish initial access, followed by a lateral move, persistence, privilege escalation, recon, collecting, and staging. And finally, there is exfiltration and encryption. So anomaly detection pinpoints the impact on the target. So you can identify the blast radius so you know exactly what to recover and recover quickly. And threat monitoring and threat hunting identify when the attackers established access so that you can ensure a safe restore point. Now, threat monitoring is a passive activity, while threat hunting is more active if there are specific IOCs that you want to hunt for. Now, these are all very powerful when used in conjunction and help you to make sure that your recovery is as fast and safe as possible. So again, to recap, data threat analytics combines three really powerful threat detection engines. With threat monitoring, you can continuously scan for known threats to detect compromise before the damage is done. With anomaly detection, you can detect file system anomalies to identify data destruction and the blast radius of an attack. And with threat hunting, incident responders can hunt for indicators of compromise throughout the time series of data. So today we focused on data threat analytics, and this is part of a larger data security platform that we offer that includes data protection, data security posture, and cyber recovery as well. With all of these components, you can keep your data safe and make it easy to recover from cyber incidents. I did also want to mention that being cyber resilient is about more than just having the right technology in place. Rubrik also offers a ransomware recovery warranty that guarantees that your data will be available for recovery in case of an incident. We will pay out up to $10 million in recovery-related expenses if that is not the case. And so far, we've never had to pay out. Included with Rubrik support at no extra cost is our ransomware response team, which is a team of experts that's there to guide you during the high-stress moments after a cyber incident. And they've performed many successful recoveries. And like I've mentioned, Rubrik Zero Labs is our research group that delivers vendor-agnostic insights on reducing data security risks. And I encourage everyone to check out the latest report from Rubrik Zero Labs. So the question we should all ask ourselves is, can we afford to wait during downtime? And how much is that going to cost in both financial and non-financial terms, such as the reputational damage that a cyber incident can cause? And so a quick example, Lang's Building Supplies is a Rubrik customer that was able to fend off a ransomware attack with hardly any interruption to business as usual. They ended up with, without having to pay any ransom, had zero data loss because they had Rubrik's data security solution in place. Now that's cyber resilience. So thank you all for tuning into this webinar. I hope you found it helpful. And in closing, really briefly, the most important asset for an organization is your data. And you can have really great cybersecurity controls at the application, network, endpoint, etc. levels. But if an attacker does manage to get in and deny you access to your data, are you going to be able to recover within an acceptable time frame? Do you know exactly what was impacted? Can you be confident that your environment is free from known threats? Do you know what exact point in time you need to recover to minimize data loss and avoid reinfection? In today's day and age, you need to have good answers to all of those questions. And that's where data threat analytics applied to your existing backup data can really help. So thank you all again for your interest. And if you'd like to learn more, please get in touch.
Alrighty, thank you so much, Veer. And as always, great to have you on. Such a great mind in the space. And I do want to point out that I have put up a poll question. This is your final poll for today, so let's make it count. We'd love to get your feedback on any additional resources you would like to explore from Rubrik. Again, this is your shopping list, your easy button, your wish list. Essentially, you're going to get exactly what you're looking for here in the most efficient way possible. So do pop your answer in there as we wrap up today's webinar. Now, unfortunately, we do not have Veer sticking around for live Q&A with us. Just too much on the books today. So this is about the end of time for us. So again, if you did put in an awesome question, which I see many of you did, do not fret. The team from Rubrik is still going to follow up with you on a separate occasion after the MegaCast today. And if you do want to get started right away with Rubrik, you can pop over to their link in the handouts tab. Essentially, it's going to take you to their info center, and you're going to be able to explore some additional resources, videos, ebooks, and also book a demo with them. So check that out. Now, with that, I do just want to thank all of our presenters for today. And I want to thank all of you. And how else can I thank you in a fantabulous way than giving out some more prizes? So final prizes here to give out are one final Amazon gift card, as well as one final MacBook Air. So hopefully you will be the lucky winner for this. All right, reminder that you must be live, present, and with us here on the webinar in order to win. And with that, let's hope you're here and you're the lucky one. So the final gift card for $300 at Amazon is going out to Al Mokaitis from Indiana. Congratulations, Al. And the final MacBook is going out to Austin Adamski from Georgia. Huge congrats to both of you. And just to recap, these are the lucky winners from today's MegaCast. So the first gift card went out to Melissa Tompkins from Texas. The second to Cedric Castillo from Illinois. The third to Ruth Means from Oklahoma. The fourth to Al Mokaitis, from Indiana. And the MacBooks went out to Carlos Wells from Georgia, Ben Madren from Virginia, and Austin Adamski from Georgia. One final huge congratulations to all of our lucky winners today. And as always, we are going to be in touch about claiming those prizes right after the webinar. And don't forget, if you did put in one of their awesome, thoughtful questions, you might also win one of the 4 $50 best question gift cards, which are up for grabs. So thank you to everyone. Huge congrats. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I do want to thank all of our speakers for being here today and making this webinar possible. Huge thanks to TierPoint, Zerto, Delinea, Nasuni, and Rubrik for making this MegaCast possible. Now, if you are on the webinar today and you would like to chat with us about presenting on a future summit, MegaCast, or EcoCast webinar, we would love to hear from you. You can reach out via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com and have that conversation with us there. Now, once again, a special thank you to all of our speakers, but an extra special thank you to all of you for attending the MegaCast today and for asking some great questions. This has been such a fun conversation and a great way to get your organization prepped for a ransomware attack. This could mean that your worst day can now end up being a day that's, hey, not so bad. Shrug it off. You're going to be so prepared that you're really not going to have to worry about it. I hope you've all gotten some interesting ideas and tips and that you feel a bit more informed and equipped to tackle and implement some of these opportunities at your organization. And most of all, I hope you all had fun with me today. Big thank you for joining. And before you take off today, do mark your calendars. We have another awesome EcoCast coming up. This is protecting your data, taking a comprehensive approach to data security, data loss, PII protection, and more. That is taking place next Tuesday, June 11th, 2024, of course. And that is going to be the same time as the MegaCast was today, 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there, and I hope to see you all again soon. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely magical rest of your day. Take care.